Welcome, everybody, inside the IA Sports Studio. My name is Cade Nissen, and today we're going to be recapping everything I saw from the semifinals. Again, I saw all 14 games. I'm sorry. I'm dealing with a little bit of sickness here, but looking to be all healthy and good to go for tomorrow. But no, we're going to talk about all 14 games from the semis, impact players that I saw, who look good, all that good stuff. And we're also going to be going through and picking each of the 7 state championship games. We're going to be going with our rankers picks. So again, these are not my picks. I'm just simply delivering them to you. So many people think they're my picks. We've got rankers that we've had all year long with the top 16s. Those are the same people picking these games. So they're people that have followed the class week in and week out throughout this season, and they've earned the right to pick the who they think will come out on top in the state title game. And rightfully so. As I pull this up, our rankers did go 9-5 last week. Not too shabby. They did pretty well. They've been picking well all postseason long. If you've been following along, for the most part, they've been pretty solid. So they know what they're talking about. They've been following this class that they were assigned to. They've been following them all year, so they know what they're talking about. Although people might get upset at them, they're definitely making informative guesses. So and it really is a guess, because high school football this year has proven to be crazy. And there was even some games at the Dome where, that it went the total opposite of what we might have thought. But that just is, it's why these teams play the game. We're doing this for entertainment purposes, for something for you guys to watch. And we hope you guys enjoyed. And we hope you guys enjoyed our coverage from the semifinals. We thought we did a good job of bringing you guys a mix of, some videos, some pictures, some graphics, and we were really pleased at how that went. And we think you guys were too, based on how many new followers we gained. And we appreciate you guys for tuning into IA football. We'll be looking to do the same for the finals, bringing you guys some exclusive coverage and doing just about as much as we can from inside the Unidome. Again, you can pay to watch on the Iowa High School Sports Network. I believe it's on TV, PBS as well for the finals. I believe. I'm not 100% sure on that. I didn't read too much into that, but nevertheless, I'll be there again at the Unidome for the finals. Be sure to say what's up. I'll bring some stickers, although you guys kind of ran me out. So we'll see if I have any left. But no, without further ado, let's get into it. Starting with Class 5A, let's recap the semis. Southeast Polk wins a thriller over Valley, 30-27. Really, both of these Class 5A semis were really good. And in that opener, Valley was down 14-0 at half. I know I was one person that kind of thought that might get out of hand, but nope. Jaden McGregory kind of willed this team. Damon Head also had a really good game. He had over 100 yards rushing and a touchdown. But Jaden McGregory, really, he had that huge interception with Southeast Polk threatening late in the game. He picked it off, and then he ended up scoring a touchdown to tie it late. I really thought Valley might go for 2. They opt to go for the extra point, and they go to overtime. And Southeast Polk's defense gets an opening stop, and then they score the touchdown. And the man of the hour, or the man of the game for that one, was CJ Phillip, who had 21 attempts for 131 yards and 3 scores. Again, he had the game leading score heading late into the fourth quarter, and then he obviously scored the game winner in overtime. He was a star. He was kind of the old reliable. They were handing it to him a ton, and he really had a great game. Connor Mobley as well, 13 for 21 for 192. He had a touchdown and an interception, so a pretty efficient day for the Ram quarterback. As Southeast Polk, they've just found time and time again to escape those really, really narrow games, and people might think of that as a detriment to them, but really those good teams, they know how to win. They find ways to win, and it's no fluke that Southeast Polk time and time again has been on the right side of that. It's because they're a really good team, and they know how to stay composed in those big moments, and they're really well coached, and they know their assignment. And when it comes down to the wire, they're not panicking, and they're able to stay under control. So Southeast Polk wins another thriller, 30-27 over Valley. I don't think we're shocked that was close. We knew that was going to be a really competitive one as Southeast Polk heads off to the finals. Moving on to our other semifinal game, a rematch from way back in week 1. Ankeny beats Centennial again, this time 10-7. The first one was a really high-scoring one in triple overtime. This one was a story of the defenses. Reed Anderson for Centennial had 11 tackles. The story for Ankeny was Connor Kaiser. He had 10.5 tackles and a sack. And another man on the Ankeny defense, he won our kind of player of the game, if you saw that graphic, Jacob Morfeld. How about a blocked field goal, an interception, and an interception return that almost sealed that one? He almost picked 6 that, but he ended up getting caught. But Jacob Morfeld, he was really a difference maker out on the edge, had a great game. And Luke Anderson, how about the quarterback for Ankeny? Not the craziest stats, but he controls the game well. They handed off to Daniel Larmy. He had a good game, 15 for 77 and a score. And really, Ankeny is just they're a tough team to beat because they don't make mistakes and they capitalize on your mistakes. They had 3 interceptions. That was huge. That turnover battle, and obviously they blocked the field goal and then they got the miss at the end of the game to win that one 10-7. So that sets up a Southeast Polk versus Ankeny State title, a rematch from week 2 of the regular season that Southeast Polk won 58-21. Now, I think if you've been following 5A, you're going to know that Ankeny is a totally different team from them. They've kind of found their identity. They'll run the ball, and again, they're not making mistakes. They're not turning the ball over a ton. They're capitalizing on your mistakes, like I said. So although that one was kind of a score that many might think will represent a blowout here, I think a lot of people will agree that this is a totally different team than it was in week 2, and this team is playing really, really good ball. Now, our ranker what does have Southeast Polk winning this one, and by an exact score, he's got 34-13. So our Class 5A ranker does have Southeast Polk winning the Class 5A state championship by a score of 34-13. So that is where we stand right now in Class 5A. Moving on to our next class, Class 4A. This one, we had one really good semifinal, and we had one semifinal where you saw a team really separate themselves from the pack, and that was Lewis Central in a 31-5 win over North Polk. Brady Hetzel, 21 for 31 for 208 and a score. Luol Maker, 6 for 96. Curtis Whitty got in with a rushing touchdown, and Lewis Central really just looked dominant. The defense was lights out, shutting out a really good North Polk team for most of that game. Just really a dominating victory for the Titans. They looked really good. They looked as advertised. And moving on to the other semifinal, Western Dubuque 28, Bonneret Farrar 21, a really, really good game. Blue Jays, they came out of the gates hot, and you were kind of thinking, oh, baby, Bonneret Farrar might be in this one for real, but the Bobcats just kept chipping away. They got a few scores late before the half, which ended up being huge. But, man, just want to give a shout-out to some of these Blue Jays because when you look at the stats, they had some incredible games. Jordan Ryle, 15 for 24 for 264 and 2 scores. But Penny Riak, I apologize if I'm not saying that correctly. He was a difference maker. He had 6 catches for 120 and a score. Cole Miller had 8 catches for 110. But the story, Western Dubuque's defense really found a way to shut down that Bonneret for our run game. Caleb Moore, who had just been on a tear, if you listen to our pre-game or our semifinal show, he had just rushed for it felt like 250 yards the last 3 games. He had 14 attempts for 18 yards in that semifinal victory. So Western Dubuque, although they kind of gave up the big plays, they were able to shut down Bonneret Farrar in that rushing attack that was so potent heading into the dome. So that was one area where Western Dubuque really found a way to step up, and they got those timely stops towards the end of the game. Offensively for Western Dubuque, it was Tanner Anderson, 12 for 19 for 119 yards and 2 scores. Both those scores came right before half. They scored, got the ball back, scored, and that was really a huge swing in the game was when they were able to get those 2 scores right before halftime. But the man for Western Dubuque that you need to know, Grant Glouser, he was well advertised heading into this game. He's Class 4A's leading rusher, and he did it again. 36 attempts for 193 and 2 scores. He had the nail in the coffin too late in that game in Class 4A. It was an incredible game for Grant. He was really the workhorse all game long, and it sets up a really, really good title between Western Dubuque and Lewis Central. One of the better title games, I should say, if you're looking at these on paper. The preseason number 4 Lewis Central team versus the preseason number 5 Western Dubuque team for the 4A state championship. These 2 teams have each won a title in the last 5 seasons. Western Dubuque was runner-up in 2018 and state champs in 19. Lewis Central won a title in 21 and were runner-ups last season. Lewis Central is the second-ranked passing offense in 4A, and Western Dubuque is the third-ranked rushing offense in 4A. Both these teams can score as well. Lewis Central is number 2 in 4A in points per game, and Western Dubuque is third. They are 7th and 8th in points allowed per game. This is an evenly matched of a game as we could hope for. For Western Dubuque to win this game, they will have to control it and limit Lewis Central's opportunities on offense. Lewis Central's just got that explosiveness with Brady Hetzel at the helm. They can really air it out. They showed that in the semifinals. And in the end, our ranker is going with Lewis Central to pick up a state title win. He's got that one at 28-24, but I think he'd tell you too, this one could really go either way. And as he says, it's one of the more evenly matched state title games that we have on our slate heading into this week. Really excited for this one. This is going to be your nightcap on Thursday, and everyone's going to be locked in for this Class 4A state title. Moving on to Class 3A, where we saw a bit of an upset. Heelan beating Creston 16-13. And really, if you look at the stats, you'd think Creston won this game, but Heelan just finds a way to win, and their defense is kind of the definition of bend, don't break. When it comes to passing yards, Heelan only had 39 passing yards. Creston had 253. But rushing was where the game really changed. Heelan's 234 rushing yards really trumped Creston's 144. And then there's a huge story. They were able to control time of possession. They kept Creston's potent offense off the field, and they got those bend, don't break stops. Creston would drive what felt like all the way down the field. I know right before half they had a shot. Heelan's defense stood strong. There were multiple times in the fourth quarter where Creston got the ball back in Heelan, and their defense I felt like they'd give up the big play and then boom, they'd get a sack, or they'd force a penalty or something would happen. And Heelan's defense just found a way to get off those field in those crucial times. And obviously the interception at the end. And man, Heelan has just played every single playoff game close. It feels like all three of the Crusaders' playoff wins have come by 3 points or less. Clear Lake, Sioux Center, and now Creston. All those games within a field goal. They've just found ways to win. Quinn Olson is an incredible leader. He plays both sides of the ball. He had an interception this game as well, so he's a proven star. Fuedo had a good game rushing the ball, and really this defense, like I said, just stands up when it needs to. Really impressive win for Heelan. I was really impressed watching them. They're a really, really physical football team. Moving on to your other Class 3A semifinal, Williamsburg picking up a huge win, 45-14 over Solon. The stat sheet literally, it felt like it could not hold what this Red Raider offense did. Derek Weiskopf at quarterback, 12 for 19 for 366, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Braylon Wetjen, 4 catches for 158 and 2 touchdowns. And Ray's Heitman might have had the best stat line of all of the semifinal games, 6 catches for 165, 2 touchdowns, and he had 15 tackles. 14 of those were solo. Man, he was just incredible. He also had a pick. 7 Red Raider turnovers was the big story, though. 5 interceptions, 2 fumbles, and that sets up a Williamsburg versus Heelan state title. Now, it's really an unstoppable force versus an immovable object. Williamsburg offense is coming in absolutely scorching hot. Heelan's defense has just shown it can shut out the only undefeated team that was remaining in Class 3A in Creston. So really, that's the story. It's going to be interesting to see how those two match up, again, with Williamsburg's potent offense and Heelan's stellar defense. How is Heelan's offense going to keep Williamsburg's offense off the field? They controlled the time of possession in their semifinal game against Creston. They're going to want to do that same thing. They're going to want to run the ball. They're going to want to keep Weiskopf and Heitman off the field on the offensive side. So it's really going to be interesting. Heelan's going to come in with that same type of recipe for success in the state title game. But in the end, our ranker is going with Williamsburg to pick up a state title in Class 3A. He thinks Heelan's run is going to end right here. But, if you've been following along with Heelan, this one's going to be close. It's probably going to come down to the wire based on how they play. They're going to chew the clock, and they're going to keep Williamsburg off the field. But our ranker does think Williamsburg has enough firepower to get this one done. Moving on to Class 2A, where, we might have the best state title of all of them. I'll say that. This one is going to be a ton of fun. Starting with the semifinals, though. Central Lyon, George Little Rock, 28, Spirit Lake, 14. A really, really bad start for the Lions. They got down 14-0 pretty quick, but they went on a 28-0 run after the first quarter, found a way to get it done, and a big part of that was Reese Vanderzee. The quarterback was 9 for 12 passing for 84 yards, and rushing, he had 26 attempts for 170 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also added an interception on defense. Central Lyon, Georgia Little Rock, after that first quarter, was just absolutely dominant. They really settled in. They didn't panic, and they played football the way that they've played all year long. Vanderzee and Eben are just a handful on offense. They kind of run, like I said, they utilize both those guys extremely well. They give them the ball in space, and they are really tough to spot. And so Central Lyon, Georgia Little Rock, a team we kind of expected in the Class 2A state title game, they'll match up with the team that we thought they were going to match up with, Van Meter, who beat Monticello 35-21 in their respected semifinal. It was really back and forth for a half. Monticello got out early. Van Meter then pounced up like 14. It was like double digits, and then all of a sudden Monticello scored, made it a game. But Van Meter, they were able to pull away kind of late in the fourth. Again, they got a touchdown in that fourth quarter to make it a 2-possession game. It was just a little too much for Monticello. But Preston Reese, he had a really good game. Obviously, the all-time or the career stat leader for passing and rushing yards in the season. He was 14 for 28 for 264. He also had 92 yards rushing. He had 3 total touchdowns, but it was 2 interceptions that really ended up costing him. Van Meter capitalized off those turnovers. Peyton Schilling got to shout him out. He had a good game, 3 catches for 111 and 1 touchdown. Most of that coming on a incredible 94-yard touchdown. That was a really good play. But for Van Meter, the story is the running back, Ben Gordon. He's going to be the headline heading into the state title game too. The Bulldog had 33 attempts for 207 yards and 4 touchdowns. He put on an absolute clinic. He was the workhorse. And it's that, again, like I said, that's really going to be the story, is Ben Gordon, that rushing attack, versus Vanderzee and their rushing attack. And we're set up for an incredible state title game. This is one where you really thought that this was the state title before the season, and it's really cool to see those two kind of go on their separate paths and now meet in the state championship. So this is preseason number 1, preseason number 2, just like we kind of thought. And we're on a crash course for what should be an incredible game. I think it's going to be a little more low scoring than people think, just because these two teams are going to want to keep it on the ground. Both teams know the other team wants to run it, so I think it's going to be really about who's able to execute in the passing game. I don't think I don't think people are really expecting these two to air it out a ton. I think they're both going to be pinning their ears to that running game. So I think it's going to be who can hit those explosive plays in the passing game that's really going to separate this, because, like I said, they both know that the other wants to run it and keep the ball on the ground. So it's going to be interesting to see who's able to adapt and figure out how to get stuff done through the air. But in the end, our ranker is going with Central Lion Georgia Little Rock. He was going back and forth in our chats. He was really up in the air about this. He was thinking about all things possible in this one. I know he was debating heavy about this, but I mean either way, we know this one's just going to be an incredible state title game in Class 2A to decide a winner. 2 teams looking to go back to back. Van Meter in a different class, Central Lion Georgia Little Rock for the second time in 2A. And again, this one is one that I've had circled for a while, and it should be a ton of fun. Moving on to Class 1A, though, where notably we have another game of preseason number 1 versus preseason number 2 for the Class 1A, state title game. Yes, MFL Marmac was preseason number 2 in our rankers poll, so that's pretty cool to look back at and see. Obviously, Grundy Center was preseason number 1, so pretty neat to see when you look back at that. MFL Marmac is now currently number 5, I believe, in our rankers poll, but man, MFL played extremely well in their semifinal win, a 41-28 win over Underwood. I do got to take a second to shout out Wyatt Powell. He was the leading rusher for the Bulldogs. I saw he broke his elbow pretty early in that game. Really tragic news. I feel bad for him. He was in good spirits on the sideline rooting on his guys, and his guys pulled it out for him. So I do want to give a shout out to Wyatt Powell. Hate seeing those stars' careers end at the Dome in an injury fashion, but I know he's going to be in, like I said, in good spirits, being a huge leader on the sideline for them. So wanted to give a quick shout out to him, because he's a great kid, and I've had a ton of fun catching up with him through Bound and looking at his stats all season long. But in that semifinal game, it was the turnovers that were really crucial, because I mean, when you look at the stats, Louette had a great game for Underwood, 19 for 35 for 282, 3 touchdowns, but he threw 2 picks. One of those was a pick 6 by Bryce Radloff early in the third quarter. That was really where the game switched. Underwood was getting the ball, threw the pick 6, and boom, all of a sudden they're down 2 possessions, and that's when it really changed. And really the star for me was, and I learned how to say his name correctly, Carver Blitz Benteen. I believe that's correct. We had a YouTube comment that helped me out with that. I also heard the Dome PA guy say it like that, so I believe that's correct. But man, Carver was a stud. The quarterback that I just read an article today from Jeff Johnson, I believe, that he was the fullback the last few years. He started at quarterback for MFL his sophomore year, moved to fullback, and they needed him back at quarterback this year, so he stepped up. Incredible story there. If you have not read that, go read that from Jeff Johnson on Twitter. Really good stuff. But no, 16 attempts for 158 on the ground for the quarterback from MFO Marmac. He also added 11.5 tackles, a sack, and I believe a forced fumble. They don't show forced fumbles on Bound, but if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure he had that forced fumble late in that third quarter. So he was a huge factor for MFL Marmac. And so was the running back Quinn McGill. I know we posted two of these guys as player of the games because they were just both incredible. 27 attempts for 161 and 5 touchdowns. Yeah, 5 touchdowns is pretty crazy. Quinn stepped up for his buddy Wyatt Powell, who went down with that injury, stepped up in a big way. And how about MFL Marmac scoring in every quarter? Now, if you listen to the semifinal preview show, I told you both these defenses on paper were really stellar, but I thought these offenses were just a little bit better, and I knew this was going to be high scoring. I necessarily didn't think MFL would win by double digits, but I thought this was going to be a little bit high scoring. It turned out to be, and MFL Marmac wins a shootout and is off to the state title. Now, in the opposite, on the other side of that bracket, Grundy Center really just controlled things from the start, beating Columbus Catholic 42-7. I thought this one was going to be a lot closer just because of the rematch from earlier. Grundy only won this one 21-14 over Columbus Catholic in the regular season, but really the Spartans dominated off the rip, and a huge reason for that was Colin Gordon, who seems to just elevate his game at the Unidome. The quarterback for Grundy Center was 17 for 20, which is extremely efficient. He had 164 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. He also had 71 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns, so 4 total touchdowns for Colin Gordon. He also added an interception on defense, and his buddy Brody Zinkula, the running back, had 14 attempts for 94 yards and a score. They really just controlled this game. They were able to shut down that Columbus Catholic offense that was full of stat fillers that just seemed like they could that just seemed like I thought Columbus Catholic was going to be able to score a little more, but Grundy Center, like I said, was able to shut those guys down. I want to give a shout out to Parker Kjelsen and Carter Locker and those guys. They had incredible years, just didn't go their way in the semifinal game. Grundy Center was able to find that one and find their groove and pick up some huge stops as that game went on. And once Grundy Center went up a few possessions, they were able to just control that clock and milk it away and keep punching it in the end zone, and that's a good recipe for success. So, nevertheless, that sets up a Grundy Center versus MFL Marmac state title. Our Class 1A ranker has been huge on Grundy Center all year, and he's going to stick with his guns right now. He's going with Grundy Center to pull this one out. Again, preseason number 1 versus preseason number 2. I think this one's going to be high scoring again. Two teams that like to run the ball, but again, these two teams run the ball very, very efficiently. You got some dual threat factors here. Colin Gordon versus Carver Blitz Bentine should be an incredible game. I expect this one to be razor thin again, but in the end, our ranker is picking Grundy Center in this one. Moving on to Class A, where we've got another class where we got preseason number 1 versus preseason number 2. West Hancock was your preseason number 1 team before they fell to St. Ansgar. Woodbury Central was preseason number 2. They've kind of hung in that top 5 all year long. Starting with Woodbury Central, they picked up a semifinal win 28-20 over East Buchanan, and the Cats really dominated in that second half. Drew Klunder, 10 for 15 for 206 for 2 touchdowns. He had an interception, but he also had 13 attempts for 53 yards and 2 touchdowns rushing. So 4 total touchdowns for Drew Klunder. Zach Butler, 19 for 101 on the ground. He also added 8 tackles on defense. And Eric McGill, who's Klunder's number 1 target, he had 76 yards receiving, 1 touchdown, and also 8 tackles on defense. So Woodbury Central, they were down going into half. East Buchanan had done a really good job at controlling that clock. And I thought that was going to be, something that carried on in the second half. But Woodbury Central was able to get a few stops, punch a few in the end zone. And once they got that lead, it felt like they were a lot more comfortable. They really settled in, and they played really well. Hunter Bowers, though, for East Buchanan, got to give him a quick shout out. 23 attempts for 169 and 2 scores. He also had an 80-yard touchdown late in that game to really bring East Buchanan back. Almost changed the game in a huge way. Woodbury Central was still able to pull that one out, but Hunter Bowers with an incredible effort for East Buchanan. Hopping into that other semifinal, West Hancock beating Madrid 39-14. This one was all Eagles from the jump. Cale Zuhl, 23 attempts for 138 and 2 scores. He was a stud. Kellen Smith, kind of the spark plug, 8 attempts for 71 yards on the ground. He also had a huge catch to set up a West Hancock score. He just plays with a ton of energy. You can just see it in the way he plays. Jackson Peterson also had a kickoff return, and we've talked about Mitchell Smith a ton, the quarterback. He had a big rushing day. He had a huge effort on defense as well. As West Hancock just seems like they're just inevitable at this point in Class A. They find themselves in the state title yet again, looking to avenge a runner-up season last year, and they get a really fun game with Woodbury Central in the state finals. Now, this is really two teams that, ID themselves totally differently. Woodbury Central, they're going to spread you out. They're going to throw it. Clunder, McGill, and they got Butler. You know, they're set up totally different. Where West Hancock, they're going to keep this on the ground. They want to control the line of scrimmage. They want to bleed this clock, which I think is an interesting strategy because similar to some of these other state title games, West Hancock is just going to try and keep Woodbury Central off the field with how much they run the ball. They're going to limit Woodbury Central's possessions. West Hancock is going to keep it on the ground. They're going to score that way, and they're going to hit those, the rare play action passes. They're going to try and catch you off a missed assignment. So this is going to be a really fun one. I think this one's going to be low scoring just because of how West Hancock plays. They're going to control the clock, and I think Woodbury Central is going to have to adjust accordingly. But nevertheless, our Class A ranker is going with the preseason #1 team to pick up a Class A state title, West Hancock. The one loss to St. Ansgar was kind of a slip up, but ever since then, the team has just been on an absolute tear, and really, they really put on a huge showing against our #1 team in Madrid in the semifinals. That was a really impressive showing in a game that they really dominated. West Hancock just does an incredible job at controlling the line of scrimmage. Can't speak enough to that in these football games. How huge that is when you control the line of scrimmage and really dominate up front, and that's what West Hancock does. And they play physical, and they know their assignment. And man, you gotta love those old school jerseys they wear. It just makes you respect them so much more. And I just have a ton of fun watching them as a Class A team. So our ranker is going with West Hancock in Class A. Moving on to your final class that I've yet to talk about. I'm running out of my voice, as you can tell. Class 8-man, where we had a few really, really good semifinals. Bedford beating Gladbrook-Rhinebeck 31-30. The Bulldogs were down multiple possessions late. They find a way to win it. They got to stop. They scored. They got a turnover, and they were able to kick a game-winning field goal. Their first field goal they've attempted all year long, and it was in the state semifinal, and it went through. An incredible moment, a really good game, great energy. And Garrison Motzinger, he was the man for Bedford. 26 attempts for 143. Silas Walston is the other back. He had 94 yards rushing. And Connor Nally, the quarterback. He might not show up in the stat book all too much offensively. Again, he is their quarterback. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, though. Only had 8 rushing yards, and he had 2 rushing touchdowns. They were massive QB sneaks to kind of get Bedford back in that game. Defensively, he also had 8 tackles, a fumble recovery, and an interception. So he was making an impact all across the field in Bedford's massive win and what might have been one of the better semifinal games across all classes right there in Class 8-man as Bedford goes to the Class 8-man state title. On the other side, Bishop Garrigan really making a statement, beating Winfield Mount Union 34-20, and really the star there is Caden Rothler, 30 attempts for 181 and 4 touchdowns. They controlled the clock, and I think a lot of people just chalked Winfield Mount Union into the state title, and Bishop Garrigan saw that, and they came out and they played really well. They controlled the line of scrimmage like we talked about for an 8-man game. These are two 8-man teams in Bedford and Garrigan that really want to keep the ball on the ground. So you might see a little bit of a low-scoring Class 8-man state title just because of how much these teams like to run the ball. You're going to see these teams trying to control the line of scrimmage and get their guys the ball in space with Caden Rothler and Bishop Garrigan and Garrison Motzinger and Bedford. So this one's going to be really fun. I suspect it to be a little low scoring. And our ranker in the end, I think he said he's going to learn from his mistake, and this time he's going to go with Bishop Garrigan. Again, we've picked against Bishop Garrigan every single round of the playoffs thus far, and again we're 0 because they're still playing at this point. So our ranker is going with Bishop Garrigan here over Bedford in the Class 8-man state title to try and switch up, how he's been picking against the team that keeps on winning in Class 8-man. So that was 7 classes of preview and prediction. I hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to drop a like, leave a comment what you think. I'm excited to see all you guys there at the Unidome this week. It should be a ton of fun. Last week was a ton of fun. And I can't wait to see you guys there. So, football fans, be sure to share this video with a friend, with a teammate, with a parent, whoever you think might enjoy watching this type of thing. My name is Cade Nissen, and I will catch you guys at the Unidome.